from the top.
Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles, the Friday podcast all about your Kindle. I'm Len Edgerly. Today is July 28th, 2017, and this is some music from the cottage next door performed by my cousins up here in Ocean Park, Maine.
Back to the A part.
I'll close out the show with some more dobro music from my cousins who are here for their family reunion next door at the cottage next to ours here at Ocean Park. And they get together every year from all over Alaska, Colorado, and there's a dobro, there's a mandolin, there's guitars, and I go join in with my guitar too. So I need to get the show up so I can get out there on the porch after supper and join in with the music. The interview this week is with Harry Bingham, author of the Fiona Griffiths detective series. He's got a new book out in the series, the sixth in the series, called The Deepest Grave, and I spoke with him last week here from Maine and reached him in Oxfordshire, England.
The big five publishers do have a model of, we will buy your book for life plus 70 years. So, in other words, I will get my books back about the time Bernie Madoff gets out of jail.
The biggest news story this week is the release of Amazon's earnings report for the second quarter. It showed sales up 25% to $38.0 billion just for 3 months. And the other aspect of it was that the earnings part of the results didn't meet Wall Street's expectations, and so that resulted in almost a 3% decline in the stock at the end of trading today. I'm always interested to see what the press release highlights, and you can tell what is top of mind for Jeff Bezos, at least by what quotes get attributed to him in the report. He says, "Our teams remain heads down and focused on customers." And then there's a long direct quote from him that lists the key events that he wants to highlight. He talks about the Echo Show, and of course we've talked about that here, the new Echo device that has a screen and video with it. Also, he mentioned calling and messaging, that it was added to Alexa on all Echo devices. So that to me shows that the Echo device is perceived as an increasingly strong part of Amazon's overall financial future, and that gets top billing in the comments from Bezos. He then moves on to talk about an Indian original series, a video series that has 18 episodes, and it's set in India. You can check it out on the site for the trailer. It looks pretty edgy, pretty beautiful people, and it has something to do with cricket. So there you have Amazon's video creation applying not just in the U.S., but being extended to other countries. They introduced Amazon Channels. That's the Audible part of, that's new programming, essentially podcasts from Audible. They're now available in the UK and Germany. Talk about the 4 Fire tablets that we've talked about here. Prime Now, which we have in Denver, where you can get things delivered within an hour, that's now available in Singapore. They added their 25th plane with Prime Air, where they're delivering their packages part of the way by their own hired planes. And the company hired more than 30,000 new employees. Also, Amazon Books gets a mention. 3 new Amazon bookstores were opened during the quarter, and then it moves on to a lot of the Amazon Web Services features, which have a big impact on earnings and also showed great growth in revenue. The third Prime Day, Bezos noted, resulted in more Prime members being signed up than ever before. It's energizing to invent on behalf of customers, and we continue to see many high-quality opportunities to invest. I'll have a link in the show notes to the press release and also a couple of other news items covering it. There are several other items that caught my eye this week, and I'll have links to them in the show notes. One of them is an article which lays out a fairly clear argument for why reading on a Kindle is better for the environment in terms of carbon released to the atmosphere than reading on physical books. And it makes some assumptions about how many books you read, and is based on some data from 2009 about use of the Kindle. So it may not be up to date, and the case for the Kindle environmentally may be even stronger than this article points out. I found it interesting. I'm not so much in the market these days of trying to talk people into reading on a Kindle. I think we've all sorted out pretty firmly in preference for reading digitally or reading on paper, and it's not really an argument that interests me that much. But I hadn't seen this kind of an environmental analysis, so I'll put that up in case it's of interest to you. There is a cute article in the Seattle Times that I came across that interviews women whose real names are, got to turn her off here, Alexa, and how irritating that can be, how different women have decided how to live with it and make fun of it. And you can imagine that as more and more of these devices are in play and people are just used to addressing this thing for the weather or a timer, and then here's a real person with the same name. That's a little awkward. Now, you can change the wake word for the Alexa to Echo, Amazon, or computer, but I would bet that 90% of the people that are using the device, maybe unless they have somebody in the family named Alexa, are using the name Alexa. Just, I don't know, it seems to be the friendliest one. I don't think I've ever been in anybody's home who had one of these devices and they weren't calling it Alexa. We visited our friends Ben and Carol Beach down in Connecticut this week, and it's an old cottage on the water built around the turn of the century. And sure enough, Carol needed to set a timer, and she said Alexa, and I said, "Where is the Alexa?" And sure enough, there was an original Alexa, the big one. The canister was on a table over on one wall of the room, and it made me feel at home. It's like, oh yeah, she's at our house too. It's fun. Our visit to Madison coincided with the arrival of Ben and Carol's newest grandchild, Harvey Madison Taylor, who was very young, just a very small infant, and looked like a very interesting person, someone I'm going to look forward to getting to know over the coming years. Harvey is a native of Austin, Texas, born on the auspicious birth date of 7/17/17. There's also a story that broke this week about an initiative that Amazon is launching in healthcare to very early sort of exploratory period. They've got a lab 1492 that is working on this. This was reported by CNBC, 1492, when Columbus showed up in the Americas, his big discovery. And an intriguing development for sure that appears to be pretty much in the early phases, but there'll be a link in that to the show notes as well. I'm seeing stories which, frankly, I'm not sure how to handle in talking to you on the podcast here. The President Trump has started referring to the Washington Post as the Amazon Washington Post and reviving some fairly old critiques of Amazon that conflate the ownership of Amazon with the Washington Post, when it's actually Jeff Bezos purchased the Post himself. And, obviously that's a fairly close relationship. But referring to tax problems and that Amazon is using the Post to lobby Congress to preserve some unfair tax advantages, it seems to me that's a disappearing story, that the information is really pretty out of date. But I don't like to see this kind of move on the part of the administration. There's been an increasing number of references to the possibility of antitrust action against Amazon, and some Democrats in Congress, I've heard Elizabeth Warren speak out on this. And there was a piece by Scott Galloway, he's a baffling character to me. He's obviously very sharp, and I've enjoyed seeing his close analysis of Amazon compared to Walmart and other companies. He has one where it's all Amazon winning in all of these different areas and video and all this, and then he throws in at the end this comment that because Amazon is destroying jobs faster than we can create them, in 2020 some district judge is going to see that he can become the governor of his state by initiating an antitrust suit, and that Amazon as we know it won't exist because it'll be broken up. I don't think that's right. I think Amazon is going to be around. I think that the company probably is doing actual lobbying in Washington appropriately to defend against charges of antitrust issues. And antitrust law is changing. It's a very complicated area. I certainly hope Amazon doesn't get broken up, and I don't think anybody that is benefiting from the customer service obsession and the innovation of the company would really be that eager to see that happen and wonder what it would be like on the other side. But I think it would be irresponsible of me not to mention these things when they show up, and when the President of the United States is reviving some of the campaign threats he made that Amazon was going to have antitrust problems if he became elected. This is kind of a rumble that I am certainly watching very closely, and if something happens that's serious and there's an actual move in the direction of what would, in my mind, be pretty clearly a politically inspired antitrust action to address what the president apparently feels is unfair coverage by a major newspaper, the Washington Post, that crosses a line with me, and at that point, I'm afraid this podcast will not be free of what some might see as a political perspective, because there would be an issue there that would need some talking about, and I would be one of the people talking about it. I hope it doesn't happen. I'd rather be talking about authors and books and innovation and things like that, and I certainly hope that Scott Galloway is wrong, and I'm going to put a mark on my calendar for 2020 to see how his prediction comes out. There was one by Tim O'Reilly that I had a similar note on about the fact that Amazon was having a proprietary platform for ebooks, that it was just going to totally fail. And for a while I was keeping an anniversary of his prediction that would happen in several years. It didn't, and I think the same outcome is likely for this provocative prediction by Scott Galloway. For the tech tip, I have a follow-up to the comments that I made last week about standardebooks.org and how you can get those great, nicely formatted ebooks onto your Kindle device. Joel Anderson writes, one alternative I don't think you mentioned. Kindles have the experimental browser. I just navigated to the standardebooks.org page and easily downloaded an AZW3 book directly. The browser in the current generation e-readers is actually pretty capable. I hadn't thought of that, and that's a great idea. If you got a Kindle and you can use that browser, you can get the AZW file onto your Kindle wirelessly. You don't have to hook it up to a USB cable, which was the process I thought you had to use. So thanks to Joel for that follow-up tip. Time now for the interview. Harry Bingham is a former banker who runs the Writers' Workshop, a literary consultancy in Oxford, England. He is also the creator of a quirky, unforgettable fictional heroine, Detective Constable Fiona Griffiths of the South Wales Police. Book 6 of the series, The Deepest Grave, was published last month and currently has an average ranking at Amazon of 4.9 out of 5 stars based on 209 reviews. It's a terrific read. I love these stories, and the latest one seems like the best so far. Harry was on the show nearly 2 years ago, just after publication of This Thing of Darkness, Book 4 of the Fiona Griffiths series. I reached him at his home in Oxfordshire by Skype last week on July 19th. I asked him to read an early passage from The Deepest Grave.
So my detective, Fiona Griffiths, has just been summoned to a crime scene. There's been a long wait for a good quality corpse, but she's on the verge of one here. And she's relatively junior detective, and she's walking with a relatively junior colleague of hers, John, to the house where the victim's body has been found. And here's how the story begins. Dinas Powys, a biggish village just outside Cardiff, a wooded valley, a low hill. The road we want is a cul-de-sac, 2 lines of smiling semis, concrete ramps and little carports, ornamental willows and a scatter of catkins. On a low wall in the sunshine, a ginger Tom licks its parts. Around one house, crime tape. A pair of coppers, a mutter of radio. Police vehicles too, of course. 2 patrol cars, a scientific support services van, door open, half blocking the road. Also a silver Vauxhall Astra carelessly parked, front wheel on the pavement, the car itself at a loose diagonal to the curb. That artfully poor parking signals the presence of some plainclothes police presence, possibly the divisional surgeon, or more likely whatever DI has been given in this case. That's Jones, that is, says John. Blessing bloody Jones. Blessing Jones, a DI recently shuffled down from Bridgend, a close friend of the chief constable, according to unreliable office rumour. I've seen the guy kicking around the office, of course, and we've had a few glancing encounters, but I can't say I really know him. I do note, however, that John, who knows him better, does not wear an expression garlanded with joy, merriment and delight. We park properly and walk to the house.
Well, that's a good taste now, and it's written in the first person in the voice of Fiona.
That's right. And weirdly, I don't even like first-person narration very much, and this is first-person present tense, which I particularly don't like. But I've written a series of novels in exactly that voice.
Comparing my memory of the first two books that I read, is the writing choppier, fewer verbs? Have you consciously changed the way her voice comes across in the books?
I'm not sure. I think there probably is a little bit of a gear change between books 1 and 2, just a little bit. I knew I was writing something rather unusual, and I didn't really know whether people were going to be happy with that. Then the reaction was great, and the sort of feedback in effect was, more of the same, but ramp it up. So I've gone a little. I've emphasised the voice a little bit more. Whether there's a difference between book 2 and book 6, I'm probably not the right person to ask. But no, there's certainly not a conscious shift there.
On your blog, harrybingham.com, you have a wonderful conversation between you and Fiona at a London coffee shop. It made me think you've been spending about 5 years with this character, and if she, the relationship, has it changed over that time? If you were to describe your relationship as author with your character 5 years ago versus now, what's changed?
Well, she as a person to interview, she's difficult because she'll kick back against any kind of authority, and you never really know which way she's going to jump. So even in a fictional interview, she's hard to manage. No, I think over time, of course, she's grown up, so that she was a detective constable, which is like the most junior detective rank here in the UK in book 1, and she was young and inexperienced, and of course by now she's got some real cases behind her. And although, her colleagues regard her as a bit of a dangerous asset, she's got enough major investigations behind her that she can't quite be pushed around as easily as right back in the early days. So she's got a little bit more confidence in her own very quirky, very unusual being. And I think that comes through. No, my relationship with the author is still just to chase after whatever the heck she's up to with a notebook, kind of writing it down in her, as you say, very, very sort of distinctive and unusual voice. And one of the things about Fiona is she's such an unusual woman is you never really know which way she's going to jump. She can bring kind of uncertainty to a situation just because of who she is. It doesn't necessarily even arise out of the situation itself.
One aspect of her that is, I think, probably part of her appeal, but she just doesn't care about what other people think of her, and yet that seems to endear her to me as a reader. I mean, how do you explain that kind of a paradox?
Okay, now that's a really interesting question. So I once heard a stand-up comic talking about something a little bit related to this, and he said, look, one of my jobs is to be the mouthpiece for everybody in the audience, and we in the audience can't, if we're outraged by something that happens to us at a supermarket, we can't actually go mental and start effing and blinding and start saying all the thoughts that are on our head. But there on the stage in a stand-up arena, the comic can do exactly that. So he takes what we're already thinking and he ramps up to the max. And I think there's something similar with Fiona Griffiths here. All of us abide by rules. And even if we're a bit awkward about it or a bit grumpy about it, we nevertheless, or even if we break little ones, we mostly feel a little bit inhibited by rules. And she really doesn't give a damn. And it's not that she's ignorant of the rules and she'll navigate her way. I mean, she's aware that some of these things have consequences for her, but she really doesn't give a damn. And so part of what's exciting about her is seeing a person act as we might feel a little bit tempted to act, but we ourselves would never have the courage to do it. And she's just like, what the heck? I'm going to do it.
Well, the other unique aspect of her backstory is this medical condition, Cotard's syndrome. As I understand it, that's a condition where the sufferer ends up feeling as if they're actually dead. You're a male author writing as a woman, but you're also somebody who doesn't have this syndrome writing as somebody who once in a while ends up feeling like they're dead. I'm wondering which of those is the bigger challenge as an author.
As an author, like my profession is to put myself into other people's minds. So making a gender switch isn't that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, there are some differences between men and women, but those are relatively easy to navigate. And, you and I and everybody listening here knows plenty of people of the opposite sex. So it's not a big leap to sort of make that jump. The real distinctive thing is, how is it to be somebody whose sense of their own reality or their own permanence is as fragile as hers? And that's where some of her kind of rule breaking comes from. For us, it's a big deal if we run a red light, for example. For her, hey, the big deal in her life is she going to wake up tomorrow feeling dead? That's what scares her. That's actually the only scary thing in her life. So red light on that scale of issues, it doesn't even figure, which means it's easy for her to break rules. That's not sort of what the issues are for her. So yeah, much more of the interest and excitement comes from that part of it, I think.
Now, you introduced that syndrome in the first book, and in the process of the book being read by wider audiences, have you come to learn any new aspects of that medical condition that have been of interest?
So Cotard syndrome is the name derives from a Victorian era French doctor, so kind of mid-19th century, something like that. And it's not really a diagnosis that would have much resonance with a modern psychiatrist. So they'd be aware of it, but they would tend to talk about dissociation and depression and use sort of slightly more 21st century type terms. And it's a relatively rare condition. But what I do find myself being struck by is I get a lot of emails from readers who don't say I have that exact condition, but who do say I have had mental challenges in my life and I could really, really relate to this character. And I even get those emails from people who I think would strike the outside world as really quite successful, quite ordinary, quite functional human beings. And I think it makes me aware that none of us are quite as functional under the surface as we look on top. And so when we read about somebody who really has major problems and has challenges managing those problems, we can actually get on board with her, because even those problems are extreme, we can relate to them.
Exactly. There's somewhat of a link, because some of the most unnerving and unforgettable scenes of the book are when she actually spends time with a corpse, sometimes a sort of a grisly one, like in this story. And in The Deepest Grave, she says that a dreamless union with the dead has been central to most of her cases. It made me wonder, have you ever done any research hanging out at a morgue just to get a feeling for what that's like?
No. I mean, my father died at home, and I was there when he did. And that was he died slowly of cancer, and so everyone was there. But that's actually the only time I've been with a dead body, and it wasn't for very long, and it was in a very, very personal context when I was thinking about myself as a son, not myself as an author. So no, that is pure kind of an imaginative exercise for me.
It looks like you may have learned a fair amount about the global market and fake antiquities researching and writing this book. What drew you to that?
Because every single book, you need to deliver something kind of interesting and new for the reader, especially with a series novel, so that people know what to expect in terms of the character and the sort of range of characters and the voice and so on. But that means that you've got to work extra hard to deliver something really distinctive with each crime and with each investigation. So the last book had a kidnap theme. I needed to do something different for this. And antiquities frauds came up as a real possibility. And then you have to start thinking about what Welsh antiquities might be of interest and how to kind of create a book out of all of that. But it's huge, and what I hadn't realised is that you could take the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. It will have fake antiquities in its collection. You could go to the British Museum. It will have fake antiquities in their collection, and the curators will not know what is fake and what is real, and they have no way of testing what is fake and what is real. And in the end, it comes down to a bit of stone is just a bit of stone. And if I tell you that this is a kind of 2 BC statue of Ramses the Great or something, well, the stone is old. What are you going to do with it? And sure, if I'm stupid enough to kind of cut it with a modern power tool and you can see the kind of stone marks or something, but assuming I do a good job of faking my antiquity, literally you cannot tell the difference between a good quality fake Ming vase and a genuine Ming vase.
It struck me as similar to the cat and mouse game between hackers and people who are trying to secure networks against hacking, that the people who are faking the antiquities are all a bit ahead of the people who are trying to make things real.
It's absolutely like that. And funnily enough, the people who go back 20 years, the sort of people who are really, really worried about genuine antiquity sites being looted, they're more relaxed now because nobody bothers to go in under the cover of darkness to go and pillage an old Egyptian temple, for example, because it's easier just to fake the stuff. So the genuine antiquities are being looted less than they were because people are just faking them.
Well, there's a silver lining.
Yeah, exactly.
I was curious about the ratings of the book on Amazon, or of the series, and I found a nice trend line that I thought maybe you'd have some insight as to what's going on. The first book, Talking to the Dead, is rated 4.4 stars. This is at Amazon.com, the U.S. site. And then the second, Love Story with Murders, 4.5. The next two, Strange Death of Fiona Griffiths, This Thing of Darkness, 4.7. Then up to 4.8 with The Dead House, and now the latest, The Deepest Grave, is 4.9. Is that sort of natural in a series that's successful, or do you feel like each of these books is connecting with readers in a better way?
I think I am probably writing a little bit better with each book than I was, but I think most of the issue there is that people tend to enter the series at book one. And quite frankly, my writing is odd, it's unusual, it's challenging, it doesn't play by the rules of normal crime thrillers. If you're looking for a kind of routine type British police procedural, my book is not that. So you've got plenty of people leaving slightly baffled 3-star reviews, let's say, for book one. What they're really saying, and I don't have an issue with this, is they're saying, this isn't the kind of stuff I like reading. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But then who goes on to read books 2, 3, 4, and 5? I mean, the people who are reading book 4, 5, 6 are the ones who get it, they love that it's distinctive, and they just relish the distinctiveness of it. So I think there's a bit of that going on. I think the books are getting a little bit better as well. And again, that is figuring out what I like writing and what my readers like reading. And I mean, this book, The Deepest Grave, there's a kind of crazy story behind that. I don't know how much we should say about it, but there's a sort of really crazy story behind it. There's lots of sort of solid research as well, but some people just are going to find the exoticism of that story ridiculous, and they don't want to handle it. But my core readers go, fantastic, what a lot of fun, I love it.
You've said that you read all of the reviews at Amazon, elsewhere, I suppose, and that's quite a lot of reviews. It's up to over 1,200 reviews so far. And as an author, when you're reading these reviews that readers have left, what's the benefit to you? What are you looking for, and how does it affect your work? You
do get a sense of what readers are thinking, actually. And I mean, I have a very active email list, so I will receive and reply to hundreds, maybe even thousands of reader emails over the course of a year. I know quite a lot about my readers. So there's a lovely woman called Sharon who tells me about her dad, who's is he 94 now, 95, but he always likes the book in print. So it's no good me sending the book to Sharon in e-form. Her dad needs print, and it's like, when can I get him a print copy? You do get a sense of who your community of readers are. And then I think you sort of share the pleasure together. And so, yeah, that thing about why my review's going up, I think it's partly because I sort of think I know what my readers like. I like writing that sort of thing. And I'm just going to take my foot off the brake pedal, and we're all going to have some fun.
One item, sort of a technical detail, since I read on Kindle just about exclusively, there's a feature on some Kindle books called X-Ray, where I can see, I can highlight the name of a character, and it'll pull up all the mentions of that character and have a little summary of the character. And it's a really handy way to keep the characters in a novel straight. And I wondered if you're aware of that, and who decides whether a book has that X-Ray feature or not.
I wasn't aware of it. So I publish my novels independently in the US. That they've been traditionally published in the UK. There isn't like a click box that says, do this. I mean, I'd be happy to do it. I don't know how much sort of tech stuff there is required to do it. If there's a lot required on the author side, then in the end, potentially there becomes quite a significant management problem, especially if you've got because a lot of my names are Welsh and very hard to read or pronounce. That would be relatively easy to kind of isolate in the text. But if you're dealing with like a name like Rod, for example, Rod is short for Roderick. It's a perfectly ordinary name. But how do I know that I'm talking about that rather than a lightning rod or a draining rod or something? So I don't know how much work there has to be on the author side to make that work.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be. So you work with people at Kindle Direct Publishing a lot, I suppose.
Yeah. But I mean, you say work with people. You don't really work with people. You work with a machine.
I met some of their staff at Book Expo America one time, and I was able to reach out to them once in a while with questions. But in fact, I should just call back that guy and say, I've got an author who'd love to have X-ray in his books, and does he need to do any particular work to do that, or is that just something that Amazon layers over some of the books that are at the site? So it'd be interesting to know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I find odd, I sell a significant amount of work via KDP as an indie author. And you'd think, okay, yeah, even if there's just like a sort of dashboard type control system for all authors, you'd think once you'd hit a certain level of sales, there might be an actual human where you could say, ask that kind of question to, and actually get a direct answer from a human whose native language is English. It would be helpful, and that's not necessarily the case with good old Amazon.
Well, now, are you still in the mode of self-publishing in the U.S. and publishing traditionally elsewhere?
I am. I still need to figure things out with my UK publishing. Really just because it's gone very well for me in the US. In the UK, my Amazon sales have probably been outstripping my sort of main street sales, my regular sort of bricks and mortar sales. And so how all of that plays out, we need to figure out.
Now, I thought I saw somewhere that you had a contract with Orion for 6 books. Does that mean that your contract is now fulfilled and you can look at other options?
It is, and other options are open, yeah.
And then have the big boys in the U.S. noticed your success and come to you with offers to publish traditionally there?
No, but I'm certainly not particularly soliciting those offers. I mean, the trouble is that the big 5 publishers do have a model of, we will buy your book for life plus 70 years. So, in other words, I will get my books back about the time Bernie Madoff gets out of jail. That's fine if they do great, but supposing they put a bad cover on, take it to Barnes & Noble and Walmart and places, and those guys just go, no, look, we haven't read the book, but that cover, I don't think that's going to appeal to our readers, so no. That book can die very, very quickly and very, very completely, and then as an author, you don't have any control of that book and ever again. So the handover of control is, I think, a big issue from an author's point of view, and it's not yet something that has been addressed really at all by the traditional industry. So, for example, I hope in the course of, we're talking, we've had very advanced discussions about a TV deal, which is coming from a North American production company. Nothing is yet signed, and I can't say anything too much about it. But they really don't give a damn whether you're indie or big 5 published. They just care, is the quality of material good? And likewise, when people are buying from Amazon, in 99% of cases, readers do not care, what the sort of name on the spine is. And if it's an ebook, there isn't even a spine. Again, all they care about is the quality of the material. So, of course, as soon as you sign with a big 5 publisher, you're handing over 75% of your royalties to them. And the question is, what are you getting in exchange for that?
Well, and now you've got quite a bit of experience with the self-publishing in the U.S. With 6 books. I think when we talked last, you were about your 2nd book. I take it that the financial experience that you've had with that path has been satisfying and enough to not make you eyeing the exits from the self-publishing realm in the U.S.
100%. I mean, so just to sort of back up for readers, my first 2 books were published with Penguin Random House, and an absolutely superb, top quality editor. I used to share an editor with Lee Child. I mean, so I wasn't entering the bottom end of the industry. I was entering at the very, very top end. Really, really great editor, really great publisher, lots of enthusiasm for the book. And it didn't really work out for basically random reasons. Since then, I mean, within a year of self-publishing properly, I was making more money than I had when I was published by Random House. And now I am making multiples of that money. And, the one thing I know is that my 2018 is going to look better than my 2017. My 2017 is looking better than my 2016. So financially, it's working very, very sweetly for me. And that's why I've really got no thought in my head at all of, hey, wouldn't it be great to migrate upwards to a big 5 publishing deal? I never rule it out. And, the right deal might come along, and the right sort of package of things might come along. So, there are some absolutely great publishing firms, and I'm not one of these people who are sort of chippy about the traditional industry. But certainly, is it possible to make real money out of quality books publishing as an indie? The answer is yes.
In the author's note at the end, you have an interesting comparison of Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes and the fiction of Raymond Chandler, sort of two ends of a spectrum. Where do you place Fiona Griffiths when you think of the kind of writing represented by those two authors?
Okay, well, I was dubious about including that note, but I've had a lot of positive response to it, so I'm pleased that I did. And what I said really was, look, if you think of all of crime fiction, you can, there are these two poles, and you have the sort of rather extraordinary gothic Sherlock Holmesy end, where the cases do tend to revolve around, I don't know, a league of red-headed people, or murder attempts conducted by bizarrely well-trained snakes, or very exotic, very left field, lots and lots of fun, but not actually like real life at all. Obviously, post-Sherlock Holmes, there was a huge growth in that kind of exotic mystery. And then Raymond Chandler really came along and sort of demolished all of that and brought crime novels back to the actual streets of actual cities. And you felt like you're dealing again with believable types and plausible crimes. And I think the Raymond Chandler model of crime fiction is basically totally won, totally dominated. And that's why the whole police procedural thing is as big as it is. It's because readers very often want realism from their fiction. And that's fine. I mean, I absolutely love Raymond Chandler. I adore Raymond Chandler. He's one of the authors, not just crime authors, but authors full stop, that I respect the most. But you know what? I love the Sherlock Holmes stuff. And no question at all, Fiona Griffiths, yes, she works in a police station. Yeah, I do my research. Yes, the crimes are conceivable, blah, blah, blah. But she is definitely in the Sherlock Holmes tradition, not the Raymond Chandler one. And has any police officer ever dealt with a crime like the one I described in The Deepest Grave? No, of course not, and I don't care.
When I read that imagined conversation between you and Fiona at the coffee shop, I said, well, what if Sherlock Holmes and Fiona ever found themselves in a tea house or whatever would be available back in that era? Would they piss each other off instantly, or what sort of relationship might they evolve?
Okay, so there's one reference in one of the books to... So in this thing of darkness, which has got a climbing theme in it, she's hanging out with a guy who's a really good quality rock climber, but not an elite level international sort of superstar of the sport. But the guy she's hanging out with happens to sort of spend a bit of time with somebody who is one of the top kind of British superstars. And she says he goes all sort of shy and a bit giggly and a bit excited. The way I would if I met a real life Sherlock Holmes. And I think she would be a real little fangirl with Sherlock Holmes. And that would be a meeting to watch. That's for sure.
Your email list, and I'm glad to be on it. Is that been pretty steady, or have you had quite a growth in terms of how many people you're sending things out to by email once in a while?
My email list today is about 13,000 names, something like that, 13,000 names. But 2 years ago, where are we, 2017? Yeah, so back in 2015, it was about 300 names. Oh. So it has grown explosively and almost completely organically in that time. And it's a brilliant, and the thing is, every time I bring out a book, that brings new readers into the series. The way I accumulate emails is in the back of my books. It says, hey, if you enjoyed this, there's a free story to download here. You can just go and download your free story. And I get your email address, you get the free story, and once every now and again, you'll get an email from me telling you about a new book or that kind of thing. But I actually counted it up recently. This last year, I think I've sent to my core email list, and that's ignoring sort of reminder emails and that kind of thing. But I've probably sent about 7 emails out in the last year.
I've had that sense that I really don't hear that frequently from you by email, but when I do, because it's not an oppressive number, it seems like it's a pretty good use of the list in terms of how busy everybody's inbox is.
Yeah, I mean, my email open rates are sort of anywhere between 50% and 75%. And, when you think that it's basically, it's not something you have to answer, it's not something you have to open, that says that the huge majority of people are kind of interested enough to open it. And, a lot of them will click if there's a sort of thing to click. So, yeah, I mean, my model is infrequent publishing. Definitely build the email list, but don't address it very often. But I would say that as indie authors go, that's an unusual model. The standard model for an indie author would be bring out a book every 3 months and hit your list every week, or more. But that model basically wouldn't work for me for multiple reasons.
When can we expect the next Fiona murder case to arrive?
I mean, they come out roughly annually. Yeah, so summer next year, I'm going to say. She
has a list where she's kind of ghoulishly, but I suppose it's understandably, where she can't wait for the next murder to show up. How does that work?
So this is a little bit of a joke, I suppose. There's a lot of, especially US set police procedural stuff, where the tone is, hey, I'm a cop in, I don't know, a really tough city like Baltimore, Portland, or somewhere, a tough city, and we deal with a lot of homicide and gunshots, and it's a gritty life of a downtown cop. Now, the United Kingdom basically doesn't have guns. We do, I mean, obviously there are murders, but you're talking about 500 or 600 across 65 million people in an entire year. Plenty of cops will not see a murder from 1 year's end to the next. I mean, that would actually be the exception, that you see a murder. I mean, it just doesn't happen very often. And a lot of what does happen is, it's horrible, but it might be a sort of fight in a pub, or it might be a kind of domestic abuse thing that has gone too far. And those things are terrible crimes and need to be prosecuted. But the sort of kind of gang warfare type things that sort of see a lot of American police procedurals, outside one or two cities here, it would just be sort of implausible. And, Cardiff is a nice, peaceable city in a nice, peaceable country. And so, yeah, I sort of, it's a joke that, here I've got a cop who loves murder cases and he just doesn't get enough of them.
I have a couple of content suggestions for you. The first is Mermaid by Jody Picoult. That is a Kindle in Motion, Kindle Single short story, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but the thing which is very intriguing is the quality of the video images that are built into the book in a way that doesn't detract from the story and are really quite striking. So if you read this on a Fire tablet, of course, or an iPad, you're going to get this effect. The other thing is that Open Road Media did a really fine job of getting a book titled The Miracle of Dunkirk by Walter Lord, first published in 1982, out as soon as the Dunkirk movie trailer hit the theaters. And that's, I read the Titanic book that Walter Lord wrote, and I know he's a great writer, so if you're interested in that movie, which has been getting terrific reviews, you might be interested in The Miracle of Dunkirk, republished in ebook form by Open Road Media. My guest next week will be Scott Parazynski, an astronaut and Everest climber who has written an autobiography titled The Sky Below, which will be released on August 1st by Little A, the literary imprint of Amazon Publishing. 2 years ago, July 26th, marked 9 years since I uploaded the first episode of the Kindle Chronicles from this very desk at the old family cottage in Ocean Park, Maine. Some of you I know have heard all 469 episodes, including this one. Your support and interest have made it a delight and a privilege to prepare this show every Friday. And I especially appreciate those of you who have reached out with feedback, ideas for stories, interviews, general tips. I love hearing from you, and it's easy to drop me an email at podchronicles@gmail.com. I will take us out with more music from the porch of the family cottage next door, where this morning I recorded a piece titled Pick Away. Features my cousin Andy Edgerly from Kodiak, Alaska on dobro. He's a member of a Kodiak band named Ellamy, Tiller, and the Twang. Backing him up on guitar is Carl Lafreniere, a summer friend from Western Massachusetts. At the end, you'll also hear Andy's brother Jim, who is a member of a terrific bluegrass band in the Boston area named High Strung Reunion.
what you need?
You betcha.
All right.
That's a little tune called what?
That's called Pick Away.
Pick Away.